Welcome to the Nerd and Normie Podcast. I'm a big film nerd, Everett.
And I'm Emerald, and I'm engaged to a nerd.
On this week's episode, we will be covering two movies from last year. We have The Iron Claw, directed by Sean Durkin.
And Quiz Lady, directed by Jessica Yu.
For both of these movies, we will do non-spoilers and then spoilers. There will be time codes in the description below. Let's get into it. The Iron Claw is written and directed by Sean Durkin and stars Zac Efron, Jeremy Allen White, Harris Dickinson in the kind of main three roles. And it follows the life of the Von Erichs, which are a famous wrestling family from WWE kind of wrestling in 1970s. I think their dad started in 50s, 60s, something like that, and then they kind of rise in the
80s
into the 80s. Yeah, because the 80 Olympics. Anyway, yeah, it's about their life and their horrible father.
Yeah, it's basically just how he is the devil and they are just tragic little kids.
Yeah, a very basic synopsis. Basically, they believe the Von Erich name is cursed and bad things keep happening, and in spite of that, the father doesn't change his ways and keeps pushing to fight back against it. Not that there, is a curse or anything supernatural in this movie, but
up to the end, he is just the worst person on earth. And it sucks because they are all trying their hardest the whole time, and he just doesn't care.
Yeah, he's a pretty messed up guy, and his wife is pretty jaded and just non-existent, and therefore the kids are,
But she has some growth. He doesn't.
Yeah. So it's basically, it follows these boys who are now, some of them, the oldest one is Zac Efron, and he's in his early mid-20s. Jeremy Allen White is off at college, and then they have two younger brothers. And then,
he tries to basically get them all into wrestling to fulfill his dream that he could not do.
Yeah, so he wants the championship, world championship belt or whatever.
The heavyweight champion belt in their home.
And I think this is a good movie. I can see why some people think it's a great movie if it connects with you.
It's Zac Efron's strongest performance of his career. I think he's only been in one or two other serious movies.
Yeah.
I know Everett didn't think he was that great in it, but I really did think that he was quite good, considering the last thing I saw him in was Baywatch. But yeah.
I thought he was fine. I thought he was clearly outclassed by Jeremy Allen White, which is...
everyone is.
Yeah, that's not me. It's not a huge knock on him. He is good in the movie, but Jeremy Allen White is the standout of the brothers, in my opinion. And I think this movie, it starts off and it's kind of fun and a little leans into kind of the crazy, wacky nature of wrestling and the, why to these people, even though, if you don't follow wrestling, it's just scripted, it's all fake. They predetermine everything and choreograph the fight. Why do I care who wins? But to them, it's no, you win if you're good and if the promoters want to keep pushing you further and further. So it's almost... I kind of likened it to winning an Oscar. It's, it's not a definitive you beat this person. It's just you did well enough that a group of people decided you can win. Yeah. And that's the prize they're after. And therefore, it's not really something they can just attain by getting stronger and better fighters. They have to learn to play to the crowd and create a narrative.
Where Zac Efron's character... he falls flat because he just struggles talking in front of everyone, and he's just a very sweet guy, so doing the tough man on the mic thing is just not for him, so he struggles to move up because he's not a performer. He just likes wrestling with his brothers and being strong and happy.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it kind of continues, I don't want to say in a predictable manner, but it's, it's basically there's a train heading for the end of the track, and you can just keep watching them not pull the brake, and so eventually it's going off the track. And that's exactly what happens, and...
Yeah, if there's not a curse, there should be, because, my goodness, were they unlucky.
Yeah. But yeah, so it just kind of, ends in a lot of heartbreak and tragedy and emotional moments, and yeah, there was some moments in that kind of third act that came across a little cheesy to us, but I think if you fully bought into those moments, I can see why so many people are invested in this movie. I think it could have been a little better if it didn't play into the goofiness all the time that it did, and yeah, was just a little more serious. It kind of undercut some of its serious tone at moments.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, pretty good. All right, spoilers for the Iron Claw. So yeah, Zac Efron is getting pushed into fighting, or not
his
pushed
only
into,
goal
but,
is to be heavyweight champion, because that's what his dad wants from him, and he just wants his dad to be proud of him.
And like, there's a scene, it's in the trailers and stuff, where like the dad lists out his sons in his favorite order and tells them, oh, this can always change. And that is the premise of the movie, is 4 sons clamoring for their dad's favor. They lost a son very early on, before the movie fully takes place. So Zac Efron's technically the second oldest, but he meets a girl and starts to kind of realize there's more to life than just being in the gym and then fighting people on your weekends. And so it's kind of looking for more, and because of this, the dad starts to favor other brothers and whatnot. And then the Jeremy Allen White's brother, or him, he's going to be going to the Olympics, but it gets canceled because of the Olympics being held in the Soviet Union, so the U.S. did not go. Because of this, he comes home and starts wrestling with them. So him...
the second to youngest brother also joins in being a wrestler, and he's the one who's good on the mic, so he's the one who moves up fastest, and he gets the shot to be the heavyweight champion. But Zac Efron's character is getting married, and at his wedding, he goes into the bathroom, and the second to youngest brother... What's his name? Something Dickinson?
Yeah.
I forget his first name, sorry. Harris Dickinson. Yeah, Harris Dickinson's character is in the bathroom, and he's puking up blood, and he thinks that he just caught a bug while he's been on the road touring. But Zac Efron's like, well, you need to stop pushing yourself so hard, because, you're gonna die. And a week later, he dies in his hotel room in Japan before he can be the heavyweight champion. So the dad's immediate reaction is just, don't cry about it, we're gonna push the rest of my sons forward, whatever. And so then it is Jeremy Allen White's turn, and he is doing really well, and he finally does become the heavyweight champion, and then he drunk drives his motorcycle into a car and loses his foot, so he then can't wrestle, but his dad is like, no, if you're not wrestling, you're dead to me, basically. So then he can't tell anyone he loses a foot and uses a prosthetic and continues wrestling. And so then it's up to Zac Efron, and nope, that's not true. Zac Efron starts training the youngest brother, who just wants to play music, to be a wrestler. All right, sorry, I misspoke a little bit. Before the second oldest brother loses a foot, the youngest brother goes into the ring to replace the one who died, basically, so they can all wrestle again. And he hurts his shoulder and ends up in surgery, and in the surgery, he gets toxic shock syndrome, and he goes into a coma, and when he comes out of it, he's just not all there anymore. And, he's trying to learn things again, but he tries to play guitar and realizes he can't do it anymore, and all the stuff he loved, he just can't do, so he kills himself. And then second oldest brother guy, Jeremy Allen White's character, loses a foot, and is also sad.
Yeah, and he goes off and kind of leaves his father's business and goes and joins the more fashionable WWE at this point, and becomes their champion and is really successful. But then he's starting to get older. He's got the prosthetic leg, so he gets kind of ousted.
He got into like opioids or something when he lost his foot because he leans on drugs a lot.
Yeah, and so he's they've basically told him like, you're no longer one of our main wrestlers. We're gonna start putting you on more side shows and less important stuff, and he just doesn't know who he is without that. And so then he calls Zac Efron, who is now at this point just trying to be a husband and father, and he's basically telling him like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'd rather be dead. And so Zac Efron calls his dad and is like, hey, I can't get there fast enough. I need you to help. And the dad's like, nah, this is between you two. Like,
figure it out yourself.
Figure it out. Like, he called you, not me. And so then Zac Efron drives to his parents' house, and his brother is there. And as he's walking into the house, his brother takes his own life outside. And then the father is just kind of there, and he isn't overly remorseful. And so Zac Efron almost kills him, but decides not to, and then sells the family business and buys a farm and
But I would
has
think
a nice moment with his sons.
The very ending when he has this moment with his sons, and then the scene where he's carrying Jeremy Allen White's body inside are his two strongest acting moments. But then when he carries him inside, he finds his suicide note where he's like, today I walk with my brothers, and he like grows a foot back on screen, and then they all meet up in heaven, and it's really awkward and weird and doesn't fit in with the rest of the movie.
And he meets his oldest brother who died when he was really young, so he's still like a 5-year-old. He's like, oh, nice to meet you, old brother, and then like gives this 5-year-old kid a hug, and I'm just like, this, I'm sure if you've lost brothers or are more connected to this material care at all about wrestling, or just, I think a lot of people just really love Zac Efron and Jeremy Allen White, and so they're kind of attached to these actors slightly more than the characters, then this would be a super emotional movie.
Yeah, but it was just a little silly for us in that moment, just because we like are watching Grey's Anatomy and make fun of it every time they go into heaven and talk to dead people, so it's kind of just a trope we didn't think we'd see in 2023.
And this prestige movie that's supposed to be really deep and heavy to have this kind of moment, which like a heaven moment can work, and it's not like it derails the whole movie. Yeah. But it just kind of is awkward. Yeah,
and Zac Efron's character had been distancing from his wife and his son because he's scared that he's going to give them this curse and that they're going to die because his family's so unlucky. But then upon losing his last brother and his dad basically saying, if you sell the family business, you're never going to be in our family again. Like, I will hate you forever. He's like, okay, why do I even want to be a part of this? So then he goes back to his wife. He starts being a good dad. They have another son, and it kind of skips ahead, and he's watching his sons play football together, and he starts crying because, you know, that was his favorite thing when he was younger. All he wanted to do was live on a giant plot of land with his brothers, and he's, you know, sad that he's not a brother anymore. And his sons come up to him and are like, you know, asking him what's the matter because their father is in tears, and he's like, sorry, you shouldn't see me this way, like men shouldn't cry. And they're like, why? We cry all the time. And it's just very cute because he realizes that he can, you know, have emotions and be a person, and that his dad was wrong his whole life. And yeah, then it's over, and yeah, it's fine. At the end, it shows what actually happened afterwards, and they were all inducted into the Wrestling Hall of Fame, and I'm too scared to Google it, because if the dad got to be in the Hall of Fame, it'll really tick me off, because God, I hate him. And then, yeah, all their kids moved on to a giant plot of land with them, and all their grandkids also live on that giant plot of land with them, and so he grew up and got to be happy, which is nice, but yeah. Mm-hmm. What an unlucky little family.
Yeah, but at the same time, you know, they lost one son early on, and then they drive another son to not be willing to explain why he's throwing up blood because he's so afraid that he won't be able to win the title for his dad. And then his other one does have a freak toxic shock syndrome surgery.
But only because they forced him into the ring.
They forced him into the ring, forced him to get surgery to get back into the ring as soon as possible. And then when he realizes things aren't going well, and his dad's basically going to shun him if he can't, he takes his own life. So again, the father has driven him to death. And then the father equipped them with like no skills and basically has told them, if you're not wrestling, I don't love you. And so when Jeremy Allen White realizes he can't wrestle anymore, he's going to be nothing, he takes his own life. So it's a curse, but it's also the father just being absolutely horrible the whole time.
Yeah. So what would you rate it?
I will give this a 7.5.
Yeah, I'm about a 7.5 as well.
Yeah, I think there's some really great shots in this. There's some really good moments. It is fun for the start, but then just kind of when it tries to be more serious, sometimes it doesn't quite land for me.
Yep.
Ever since I was a child, people said my family was cursed. Mom tried to protect us with God. Pop tried to protect us with wrestling. He said if we were the toughest, the strongest, nothing had ever hurt us. I believed him.
All right, my movie this week was Quiz Lady, directed by Jessica Yu. This stars Sandra Oh and Awkwafina, with guest appearances from Holland Taylor and Jason Schwartzman and Will Ferrell. I picked it because Sandra Oh is everything to me, and I love her. And it looked just kind of silly, and I thought it was going to be, interesting to have Awkwafina be the serious one and Sandra Oh be the silly, goofy one. And yeah, it follows these two sisters whose parents suck, and they, basically raise themselves, and one of them goes more into partying and being a free spirit, and the other one goes into getting a stable career even though she hates it, and watching quiz shows all the time as her only support and only stability in her life. Yeah, and also there's a pug.
Yep. Yeah, it's just kind of your classic two people who used to be close are now really distant and completely different, and then they learn to accept each other for their differences and still love each other. And it was funnier than I thought it might be, just because it was like a straight to streaming comedy, and sometimes those aren't very good. I thought it was pretty funny, especially there were a few standout moments that really had me laughing, but at the same time, in the end, it's kind of one that I don't know that I'll remember having watched. It's a solid comedy. If you're looking to kill an hour and a half with some friends, you could do a lot worse.
Yeah, it's better than expected, but not enough to be like a great comedy. But yeah, it's a great straight to streaming watch at home. Yeah. I wouldn't say family movie because they swear a little bit, but if you don't care if your kids hear swear words, I would say it's a fun family watch.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to like here. In particular, just watching Sandra Oh and Awkwafina play against type in a lot of ways was fun. They both are hilarious in their own right and do really well with these kind of odd characters for their usual roles. But at the same time, it is a little weird watching them watching Sandra Oh
be silly and
goofy and have
colorful hair extensions
and crazy outfits and all of this stuff, and see Awkwafina just in drab, Dwight Schrute office attire the whole movie. Is just odd.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say it's pretty funny. There was only like one moment that we were sad about, but we'll get into that in the spoilers section. But yeah, that's really all I can say non-spoiler wise. So let's go into spoilers. All right, spoilers for Quiz Lady. So this follows, like we said, Sandra Oh's character and Awkwafina and their sisters. They're 10 years apart, and their dad leaves and then dies pretty much immediately when they're young, and they're raised by their mother, who is a gambling addict and just sucks. And yeah, they don't really have any stability, so they go off the rails in two different directions. One's totally OCD, serious, like very into quizzing and being smart and whatever, and she just takes care of her older sister's dog, who she got and then immediately left her at home with their horrible mother while she went off to Hollywood to be an actress, which never panned out, and she doesn't ever have a career, and she just kind of does whatever she feels like whenever she feels like it.
And borrows a lot of money from Awkwafina.
Yeah, and also, cries and screams to get what she wants and is just a little crazy.
Yeah.
And through an odd series of events, their mother goes into gambling debt or whatever. This mob steals the pug, their 23-year-old pug or whatever it is, and is like blackmailing them for $80,000. And so Sandra Oh uses this as an excuse to get Awkwafina on the quiz show that she's loved her whole life, that Will Ferrell hosts.
At this point, Sandra Oh is convinced she's going to become a life coach, and this is her great moment. Her first big project is to make Awkwafina more than just a drab office lady.
So as we find out later, Sandra Oh actually had a giant lawsuit settlement coming and already had the money, but she just really wanted to push Awkwafina into being the best that she could be. So yeah, they go on the quiz show and, do drugs and whatever. But yeah, they win. And it's cute and it's funny. The only thing that bothered me is that she drags Holland Taylor's old lady character clear across the country to play charades with her on this game show. And then when it comes down to it, she ends up not letting her play, which made me very sad. And the only other thing that bothers me is they did like a after the movie, this is what happened kind of a thing. And they never mention their mother again, even though their mother's the reason they had to get the $80,000 in the first place. But besides that, it's like a solid, cute little comedy.
Yeah, and I think for me, like most of it worked when it was just Sandra Oh and Awkwafina doing their thing, but the whole gang subplot, kidnapping the dog, was whatever to incite the incident. But then we spent a little bit more time on it than I was expecting. It turns out this gang member is really passionate about animal care, and he's going into debt himself, and that's why he desperately needs this money, and he can't make rent because he's spending any money this gang makes on caring for these dogs. And it was just kind of weird, and that bit of comedy never landed for me. And they had a few kind of extended moments with the gang that I was just like, this isn't funny, this is nothing.
Yeah.
And then they get the money in the end and take care of dogs, I guess.
And eat fajitas.
Yeah.
But I did really like the fact, I don't normally like Will Ferrell because I feel like he plays such jerks in everything that he's in, and I don't find his humor very funny. But he was in this, and he played a genuinely good, humble, sweet, and kind game show host who genuinely remembered and appreciates every single person who ever comes on his show. There's not one thing he does that's bad in the entire show.
Yeah, he's very nice, he's very kind. There's a reason they kept the show going for 30 seasons or whatever. And yeah, he has a whole hallway of bow ties.
Because he wears a different one every episode.
Yeah, and so it might initially come across like he's egotistical, and I thought that's the route they were going to go, is he's some crazy egotist who hangs up all his bow ties, but he puts them up because later he's talking with Awkwafina, and he's like, no, I remember this one because that night so-and-so competed, and it's just someone from Texas who had this, and then, oh, this person was from Illinois, and they were, worried about this, and he just remembers who they are, and that was very sweet and touching. And then, Schwartzman is this insufferable, know-it-all kind of guy who's almost breaking the show record for a number of consecutive wins, and he convinces the crowd that he is the good guy and that they should really like him because he's kind of angling to replace Will Ferrell, but Awkwafina knows him to be fake and a jerk. And then she beats him, and it's satisfying. And the way she's terrified of doing charades because her one good thing is trivia. But then she does, sadly, oust the old lady who she dragged, who just wanted to play charades because it's her favorite thing. But she does replace her with Sandra Oh, and they have a really sweet moment where they're able to get the most obscure charades clues based on like personal history, and some of them are even moments that have come up in the movie, so you can kind of like, it's like some of it's just random things that they do that was probably improv on set, and then other times they did stuff that were kind of callbacks to the movie, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah. But yeah, it was really cute. It was funny. I enjoyed it. I would probably also forget we watched it in a few months, but you know, for a quick it's like an hour and a half long. Yeah. So definitely worth a quick watch.
Yep. What would you rate it?
Probably 7.5 as well.
I'm going to go a bit lower and go a 6. Like, I don't know, maybe I'll recommend this to people if they're looking specifically for a comedy and the only streaming service they have is Hulu, or they've watched all the other ones that I normally recommend. Whereas the Iron Claw, which I rated higher earlier, I would give a little more merit to. So I think a 6 for this one.
Cool.
I can't play on live TV in front of millions of people.
I'll let you get to it. I know you gotta get through hair and makeup.
I already went through hair and makeup.
Well, then you missed a spot.
All right, thank you for listening to our episode this week. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Nerd and Normie, and tune in every Monday for a new episode.
And if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. And if you're listening on an audio platform, give us a 5-star review. It really helps us out.
Thank you.